This shiny object is my new teleprompter, the X17 II made by Neewer, and it's awesome. Awesomely big, commodious. Hi, Ray here. I've never made a secret of the fact that I use a teleprompter. Really, I have to credit one with getting me this far on YouTube. And I just hit 7,000 subs last week. I'm one of those people, and I have a script going into detail on what that means, that may or may not get loaded into the teleprompter app, but let's just say that words that form in my head often don't make it to my mouth, especially when it comes to recalling technical specifications of the stuff that's a big part of what I talk about here, like this device. So yeah, the investment that I made several years ago, my original unit, has really been a lifesaver. Well, certainly a time saver, because I can now get through recording one of these videos in, say, about 4 takes instead of 40. And that's not too much of an exaggeration. As regular visitors may have heard me say, I've been a writer a bit longer than I've been a photographer. So why not exploit my writing as well as my visual skills? That's the way it's done on the nightly news, right? Except I fill both roles. I'm my own talking head. So this is the X17 17-inch teleprompter, the largest in Neewer's catalog, which also includes 12, 14, and 16-inch models. This thing has plenty of real estate, which will, for instance, accommodate tablets right up to the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. In fact, compatible with any tablet or smartphone up to 14.3 by 9.2 inches, 36.5 by 23.5 centimeters, and lots more to boot. Incidentally, this is a small thing, but I like the fact that the locking screw is accessible from the front on this rail, unlike my last one. This is the support for the iPad or whatever, and it makes it easy to adjust. If you're not familiar with how these things work, I'll get to that shortly. The product shipped in a giant box. I wondered what the hell it was when it arrived. But the teleprompter itself is stored in a pretty nice metal case. I will say that while it looks like one of those very tough aluminum cases, this isn't something that I'd sling around, not just because the teleprompter itself isn't something you want to handle roughly. The main component, the beam splitter, is glass after all. But because the case isn't quite as bomb-proof as it first appears. The handle, for instance, looks like it's plastic. Still, this case is way better than what you get with most teleprompters on the market. Inside, the padding is bare styrofoam. That's not my favorite thing, but much the same as other brands. The X17 sets up in a moment. Out of the case, no assembly required. Initially, it's just a matter of adding the plate from your tripod. There's a choice of threaded holes including 3/8 and 1/4-20 that accommodates my cartoni plate, for instance, very solidly. Then simply mount it on your tripod, set the beam splitter angle, should be around 45 degrees, zip the hood, snug the drawstring around the camera lens to prevent light leakage. Now when it comes to actually reading one's script, you need something to add your script to, which will then scroll as you read. Neewer has you covered with its own app, compatible with iOS 11, Android 6, and it works in conjunction with the included controller, the RT113 remote, which runs on 2 AAA batteries. So right there, you have a couple of things included that, to my knowledge, aren't a given with most other teleprompters. Like most apps, it's a simple matter of downloading from the App Store. It's also possible to scan the QR code in the accompanying instruction manual. You can register and pair the controller via Bluetooth. It looks like you can use as a guest, but I haven't explored that option. And store scripts via the app. My approach is to load my scripts through the From My Phone option, which accesses my scripts folder on Apple iCloud. It took me a while to figure that out, that it just means mapping access to your files. That's how I've been doing things for several years now with another app, which I'll talk about later. Otherwise, the whole thing is relatively straightforward. It took me a moment to notice the editing feature. It's a very important option to adjust line and paragraph spacing, etc. to aid in pacing. And that's something I do before I even begin my narration. I do a practice run to see where I need to adjust on the app itself. There's a setting to switch between normal and reverse text, and the way my dyslexic brain often sees things, backwards. Of course, you choose the reverse setting a la Leonardo da Vinci when you roll the cameras. So the mirrored screen presents the text as we'd expect. Incidentally, the beam splitter has 71% light transmittance, very good performance, 1% better than my previous unit. And scrolling speed control. Unfortunately, that isn't mirrored on the remote. Too bad. That's something that would really come in handy during one's performance. I'd like to see that added to future iterations. We can control text size. I wish this or another option included setting border width. That's important so one's eyes don't wander too much. I also wish there was a direct way to switch between the scrolling screen and the editable script. There's an eye icon that sort of moves from one to the other, but unless I'm missing something, it doesn't actually preserve your place. So this, I think, is an oversight in the UI that needs to be fixed to make the app more user-friendly. The app that I've been using, which I featured in my original teleprompter review, has become unreliable for whatever reason. It randomly stops or more commonly hiccups rather than scrolling smoothly. So I quit trying to control via that app months ago. So I have to get up to manually reset and restart every time I mangle a word or sentence. That's a real pain, especially when there's a table between me and the camera, teleprompter, and iPad. I've been using this newer system for several weeks, and the combo's working really very well. So I don't think the problem was with the old iPad Air that I'm using, or Bluetooth. Speaking of, this is an iPad I commandeered from my wife after I bought her a 12.9-inch iPad Pro a couple of years ago. Now I have all this real estate, as I mentioned, so I'm sure she wouldn't object if... Much is going to depend on your eyesight, but Neewer says you can read confidently from up to 13 feet, 4 meters, and that accords with my experience, and I can make it work for me at a greater distance than the old 12-inch screen. I'm glad that there's also 3 threaded holes on the left side of the chassis for accessories, and I've taken advantage of that thoughtful feature to add a monitor supported by a magic arm. Now, as featured in my overhead rig video, I own a newer 7-inch monitor, the F100. Here I'm using a newer product, the F500 5-inch monitor, which again ships with a sunshade. In this case, that helps keep the glare of the studio lights off the screen. It works great. So I can check that everything's where it should be, especially when I'm setting up and running initial tests. I'm getting ahead of myself, so I can fit my Nikon Z9 on this teleprompter. It's a tall camera due to the vertical grip, so it was a real squeeze to mount on my glide gear unit. So I've been using my Z8 as camera 1. Not a big deal since I have both cameras, but with the X17 and its much more sophisticated camera mount, no issues at all. The raised platform is really well designed, not to mention solid. First, it comes with a quick release Manfrotto 501p plate with safety features that can be directly pressed from the top and locked without alignment. A release button unlocks the plate. So for instance, you can switch quickly the camera from the teleprompter to, say, a tripod head. The 1/4 and 3/8-inch screws connect DSLR cameras and camcorders of up to 44 pounds or 20 kilograms. And to center the camera, the mounting platform moves 2.2 to 3.5, 56 to 89 millimeters, up and down, and slides on the 9.8-inch, 248 millimeter track to dial in the camera position. So this should accommodate pretty much any camera that you want to use. So we're all set. All you need now is a good script, maybe a bit of delivery practice, a camera, and away you go. Neewer contacted me a couple of months ago to ask if I was interested in reviewing any of their products. I said yes, and here we are. So, a disclosure note here. This isn't a sponsored video as such. Neewer only supplied this teleprompter. No money changed hands. There's no other obligation. My opinions are unfiltered and unvetted. You're only seeing the sponsored content alert because I'm adhering to YouTube's strict guidelines. Well, I hope you found this useful. Please give it the old thumbs up if you did, and if this is your first time to the channel, we'd love to see you again. Please do consider subscribing. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next exciting installment. In the meantime, take care. Cheers. We'll see you later.